In the dim light of early evening, the small, seemingly idyllic town of Willow's End prepared itself for a night unlike any other. At the heart of this anticipation was Jacob, a man known for his love of pranks, especially on April Fool's Day. This year, however, Jacob sought to outdo himself, to orchestrate a prank that would be remembered for generations. The idea was simple, yet chilling. He would convince the entire town that a supernatural force was slowly taking over Willow's End. Jacob started by spreading rumors, whispers of shadows moving in the night, and objects in homes slightly out of place. He enlisted the help of his closest friends, who shared tales of eerie noises and fleeting glimpses of figures in the mist. As the story circulated, a palpable tension began to build within the town. Jacob, watching from the shadows, could barely contain his excitement as April 1st drew closer. On the eve of April Fool's Day, Jacob initiated the next phase of his plan. With the help of sophisticated sound equipment, he projected ghostly whispers and haunting cries throughout Willow's End. The streets were bathed in an unnatural fog, created by strategically placed fog machines. Figures, crafted from wire and cloth, were positioned to appear as specters in the mist. The town, already on edge from the rumors, was catapulted into a state of fear. But as the night progressed, something unforeseen began to happen. Among the fake whispers and manufactured shadows, genuine cries of terror started to echo through the streets. People reported seeing figures that moved with an eerie autonomy, unaffected by the wind or the manipulations of strings. Objects within homes didn't just seem out of place. They were violently thrown across rooms by unseen forces. Jacob, initially dismissive of these accounts, began to feel a creeping dread. The prank, designed to be a mere spectacle, was morphing into something else, something he could no longer control. His attempts to reassure the town and unveil the prank were met with disbelief and panic. The very fabric of reality in Willow's End seemed to warp, as if his actions had invited something truly supernatural to cross into their world. As the town spiraled into chaos, Jacob sought to find the root of these genuine paranormal occurrences. But with every step, he felt the weight of the darkness he had unwittingly unleashed. The once clear line between his elaborate hoax and the increasingly terrifying reality blurred beyond recognition. Willow's End, gripped by fear, stood on the brink of an abyss. Jacob realized the true horror of the situation. In his quest to create the ultimate April Fool's prank, he had become the architect of his own nightmare. And as the clock struck midnight, marking the end of April 1st, the true extent of the horror was yet to be revealed. The darkness, once confined to shadows and whispers, began to take a more sinister form, one that promised to engulf Willow's End in a terror far beyond any prank. The days following April Fool's Day in Willow's End were marked by an eerie silence. The once bustling streets were now deserted, the townsfolk barricaded within their homes, afraid of the darkness that had taken root in their town. Jacob, plagued by guilt and fear, was determined to confront the nightmare he had helped to create. He sought out the oldest records of Willow's End, hoping to find some clue, some way to reverse the terror that seemed to grow with each passing night. In the dusty archives of the town's library, Jacob discovered a forgotten chapter in the history of Willow's End. Centuries ago, the town had been built near the site of ancient ruins, believed by local legend to be a gateway between worlds. The settlers spoke of a pact made with the shadows, ensuring peace in exchange for their acknowledgement and respect of the ancient forces. But as generations passed, the pact was forgotten, relegated to mere superstition. Jacob realized with a chilling clarity that his prank had violated this ancient agreement. By mocking the supernatural, he had invited the wrath of whatever lay beyond the ruins. Armed with this knowledge, he knew he must act. But as he prepared to leave the library, a thick fog began to seep through the cracks of the building, and the whispers returned, louder and more menacing than before. Understanding the urgency of his mission, Jacob gathered a group of townsfolk who were willing to stand against the darkness. They ventured to the ruins at the edge of town, finding them alive with an otherworldly energy. The air was thick with power, the ancient stones vibrating with a silent scream that seemed to pierce their very souls. In the heart of the ruins, they found the gateway, a swirling vortex of shadows that pulsed with malevolent intent. Jacob stepped forward, offering a plea for forgiveness to the forces they had angered. He spoke of the pact, of their desire to restore the balance and respect that had been lost. As he spoke, the air around them began to still, the whispers fading into silence. For a moment, it seemed as if the darkness receded, acknowledging Jacob's plea. But then, from the depths of the vortex, a new form emerged. Not a shadow, but something far more ancient and terrifying. It was a being of darkness and light, of nightmares made flesh, and it fixed its gaze upon Jacob and the townsfolk. The creature spoke in a voice that resonated in their minds, a voice of despair and ancient fury. It told of the broken pact, of the price that must be paid for their transgression. The darkness that had been unleashed was but a herald of what was to come, unless they could prove their sincerity and restore the balance themselves. Jacob, facing the entity, realized the true depth of his folly. He had sought to play a prank, to weave a tale of horror for the amusement of his town. Instead, he had opened the door to a genuine horror, one that threatened to consume not just Willow's End, but perhaps the world beyond. As the entity faded back into the vortex, leaving behind a chilling ultimatum, Jacob and the townsfolk were left to contemplate their next move. The night was no longer a cloak for childish pranks and ghost stories. It had become their battleground, a place where the shadows danced with a sinister purpose, and the fate of Willow's End hung in the balance. The quest to restore the pact and fend off the darkness was far from over. Jacob understood that the coming days would test the limits of their courage and resolve. The town would have to stand united, drawing on the strength of their ancestors and the ancient wisdom that had once protected them. The shadows awaited, but so too did the chance for redemption and the hope of a dawn free from the terror that had consumed their nights. As the days turned into weeks, Willow's End found itself ensnared in a relentless grip of fear and uncertainty. Jacob and his band of townsfolk, once united in their quest to restore the ancient pact, began to fracture under the weight of their daunting task. The entity's ultimatum echoed in their minds, a constant reminder of the stakes at hand. Yet, despite their efforts, the darkness only seemed to grow stronger, its manifestations more aggressive and terrifying. Amidst this escalating terror, a revelation shook the very foundations of their quest. Among the ancient texts and lore, a hidden truth emerged, one that Jacob had initially overlooked. The entity, the malevolent force they faced, was not merely a guardian of the pact or a vengeful spirit awakened by their folly. It was a creation of their own collective fear, a manifestation of the town's forgotten sins and darkest secrets, brought to life by the prank's unintended consequences. This realization struck Jacob with the force of a revelation. The true enemy was not the darkness outside, but the shadow within the hearts of Willow's End's inhabitants. The ancient pact was not a truce with an external force, but a covenant with themselves to face and overcome their inner darkness. The entity's ultimatum was not a demand for appeasement, but a challenge to confront and reconcile with their own past. With this new understanding, Jacob rallied the townsfolk for one final effort. Instead of facing the shadows with fear and defiance, they approached with acceptance and introspection. One by one, they shared their secrets, their regrets, and their fears, not just with each other, but with the darkness itself. As they did, the entity began to change, its form becoming less terrifying, its presence less oppressive. On a night that seemed like any other, under the cloak of darkness that had once brought terror, the people of Willow's End gathered at the ruins. There, they offered not a plea for forgiveness, but a declaration of understanding. They acknowledged their fears, their failings, and their willingness to embrace and learn from them. To their astonishment, the entity responded. The vortex of shadows dissolved, revealing not a creature of nightmares, but a mirror. In it, they saw not just their own reflections, but the soul of Willow's End, a tapestry of their collective hopes, fears, and dreams. The entity spoke once more, its voice now a gentle echo in their minds. It congratulated them on their courage to face the true darkness, the one that resides in the hearts of all. With dawn, the town awoke to a new beginning. The shadows that had once terrorized them were gone, leaving behind a sense of peace and unity stronger than any they had known. The ancient pact was restored, not through rituals or offerings, but through the understanding that the real battle against darkness begins within. Jacob, once the architect of their nightmare, became the catalyst for their redemption. Willow's End, forever changed, would remember the time when fear and darkness brought them to the brink. Yet it was their willingness to face the shadows within that saved them, a lesson engraved in the heart of the town for generations to come. In the end, the greatest twist was not the nature of the entity or the source of the darkness, but the discovery that the most profound horrors and greatest heroes reside not in the world around us, but within us. And in facing them, we find our true strength. Thank you for listening to my channel.